that they needed an extra long one after the huge victory for the USC Trojans over the weekend, taking down number 13, LSU Tigers out of the SEC. Yeah, we got an exciting show for you today. I'm your host, Ryan Abraham, joined alongside Mr. Triple-Double himself, Conor Morrissette. How you doing today, Conor?
Doing well. Very excited to talk about this game, Ryan. I know we both rewatched the LSU game after being there in person, and man, oh man, that defensive turnaround, it happened a hell of a lot faster than I expected. I'll say that.
Very, very quickly for USC's defensive turnaround. You want to overreact to week one, but that's about as good of a start to the season as you could have asked. I was texting with Andy Staples, buddy of mine, went over to competitor now, but that's okay. We still love him. And just like the turnaround, watching where Florida State was in early December, undefeated, looking like you're going to go to the playoff, and where USC was going to the Holiday Bowl after losing 5 of 6, and Florida State's lost their next 3 games, and USC, wins the Holiday Bowl, hires D'Anton Lynn in the offseason, and boom, beats LSU in the opener. Like USC's on the morale for USC's on a high. Florida State dropped off a cliff. Like it's crazy how those two teams, like two blue blood programs, just have went in completely different directions in the last few months.
Oh, absolutely crazy. And I was skeptical of the team. We all know it, but that defensive turnaround, it happened way, way quicker than I imagined. Like I feel like in 9 months, yes, D'Anton Lynn coming in was huge, and he's made a massive difference. But I felt like the schedule that USC had a little bit harder than UCLA's. Some of the players on the defensive line at UCLA, I feel like were better than what USC has. That would sort of even out a little bit, and there would be some growing pains. Emory had one 34-yard run, John Emory, one 39-yard run, and then they had the one coverage bust. But
like the 41-yard reception. But outside of that, it was like...
I mean, Achille Arnold maybe misplayed that one touchdown to Lacey. He was in a good spot, and then he wasn't. There's nothing even really to nitpick after watching that game back. Fundamentally sound. The tackling was a lot better, and I am just blown away by what I saw, especially on the defensive line. If you look at the Pro Football Focus grades, Anthony Lucas gets a really high grade, Eric Gentry gets a really high grade, Braylon Shelby gets a really high grade, and then the LSU offensive line on the flip side, none of those guys graded out very well. USC won the line of scrimmage, and I think anyone who felt like that was going to happen is crazy because of what LSU was bringing back in the trenches, especially on offense with Campbell and Jones, those tackles on the inside. The 2 guards were 3-year starters. That was a big mismatch on paper, and then USC to gain all that weight with D'Anton Lynn calling the shots, add a couple transfer portal guys, and they not only hold their own in the trenches, they win the battle there. That was shocking to me, and that makes me feel like the season, it's going to go a lot differently than I anticipated to begin the year. Credit to Riley for making all these changes. Credit to Lynn for being a damn good coach, and credit to the players for doing what they were told and playing really, really fundamentally sound football. Such a difference from a year ago. Again, I'm blown away by how quick this all has happened.
Yeah, it's crazy stuff here. All right, so we're getting into things. If you have questions, still email us, podcast at uscfootball.com. I think I looked to see if we had any new ones. So any questions, you can send them over to us. We just got one here. The new one just came in the mailbox right as I was talking about that, so we'll get that over there. If you want to call or leave us a voicemail, I think we got 2 or 3 voicemails to get to. We got a couple texts. The number is 424-254-9141. Leave us a voicemail or a text, and we'll play it on the show. And if you have the Apple Podcasting app or Spotify, we would love for you to leave us a 5-star rating. It does help grow the show. And even if you're on Apple, give us a review. Tell us what you like about the show. If you want to be critical, just leave us the 5 stars. You can say whatever you want. We do appreciate all of that. Also want to thank our sponsor, longtime sponsor, Trader Joe's. They absolutely crushed it in Las Vegas. So if you guys came to the meetup over at Flankers, first of all, shout out to Flankers. They were awesome. We had 3 different events there, and Trader Joe's gave me a case of those bags, 200 bags. We gave them all away. Tried to split it out. We did some Friday, some Saturday, and some Sunday. Sunday was a little harder because you can't really bring them into the game. But, man, people loved them. They just ate them up. Trader Joe's was great. As soon as I got back, I needed to fill up my fridge, so I went over to Trader Joe's and picked up some of my staples from over there. So good stuff as always. I found these noodles, it's like a ramen kind of thing, but it's like a spicy one. It's a package of 4 noodles. I forget the name, so I'm sorry about that. But check it out. They had it on one of the end caps. It was like a new one. So I was going to have that for dinner tonight. We'll try that out a little bit later. But thanks again to Trader Joe's. They've been great to us. So those bags went quick in Vegas, Conor.
You did a good job, Ryan, of not bringing too many to that first meetup because I feel like they would have gone even quicker. Nice job spacing it out, bringing enough for the Friday, the Saturday, the Sunday, and eventually we ran out of them. But I feel like if I was in charge, I would have brought all the bags and they would have run out like this. So good for you for spacing it out.
Yeah, I did my best on that. We are live on YouTube, so if you're watching us live, thank you so much for doing that. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel at Inside Troy. We got like 75 people or so to start going in there. If you have questions, you can put them in there. I will star them and get back to them later. And Mark always says hi. Hello, Ryan and Triple Double. And if you have a comment, I will put those up on the screen as well. And I did want to let you guys know about Autograph. I think we talked about this before, but it is a great way if you want to get this show, any of our podcasts on an app, and you can get our USC Football content as well. So go to ag.fan to download it, but make sure you use the code USC. It's actually started by some guys from Michigan and USC. Tom Brady was involved in it. So we've been working with them for a couple months now. It's a cool app, and they put all the USCfootball.com stuff up there. So check it out. And the more content you consume, they give you points, and there's like a contest in there so you can get better pricing on tickets and merchandise and memorabilia and all that fun stuff. But you can follow them on Twitter at Autograph or go to ag.fan and go check it out. All right. We've got a lot of stuff to get to. I guess we got some newsy stuff. We're going to get into the game. You've probably seen some of our takes. We did a live show in the hotel room afterwards. But since Conor and I have both rewatched the game, we'll kind of give you our second view because we're not watching the TV. We're in the press box, and sometimes you're in a press box and they're giving you lots of tidbits. This was not one of those press boxes where they were feeding you information. So it was just pretty much what we were watching. I don't know if you agree, Conor. It wasn't like sometimes they're like, oh, and that was a record for this, or that was. I didn't get much of that in the press box this time.
No, and the whole thing with the disconcerting signals early in the game that it looked like Alani Noah had that false start, but then when you rewatch the ESPN broadcast, they bring in their rules analyst, and he says, no, this is a new change this year. They're going to call that if they feel like the defensive line or a linebacker collapsed to try to draw an offensive lineman offside or make the offensive lineman false start. That's a new emphasis this year. So from the press box, it was like, okay, Alani Noah false started. USC's going to be back 5 yards, and then they called what they did, the delay game on the defense. I was confused about that. Watching the TV broadcast back helped with that and helped with a lot of other stuff too. It's always important for us, I think, when we're at the game to watch it back on TV too.
Yeah, so we'll get in with that. We've talked about where was USC going to be ranked. We found out because Florida State had the Monday game, so we didn't find out until yesterday on Tuesday. But the coaches poll, which I never put a lot of credit into, up to number 14. In the AP poll, number 13, so sort of took LSU's spot, I guess you could say, and then LSU dropped. USC went up 10, but LSU only went down 5, 18. You get that little SEC bounce. But if you're a USC fan, you're kind of rooting for LSU the rest of the year. I think they did look pretty good. But I thought USC might go up a little higher. You look at some of those teams. Certainly they don't have a win like USC. Notre Dame, moved up. Oregon dropped because they look kind of crappy against Idaho. But still 3 top 10 teams left on USC's schedule in Michigan, Notre Dame, and Penn State. And I thought Penn State probably looked the best out of all of them. But any surprises in the rankings?
Not really. I thought USC might jump up to 10 after having one of the wins of the weekend. But
me too.
I mean, seeing what Miami did, they deserve to move up 7 spots. I feel like Utah, people are high on them. Michigan, after winning the championship, even though they didn't look fantastic, I understand them being at 10. And Missouri had a good year. It's one of those things where just as time goes on, these will work themselves out. Having a chance to get into that top 12, it's so much better than it was in the years past. In my opinion, more teams getting into that big dance, if you want to call it that, I think is better for the sport. And it's especially better for a USC team because in the past, to be one of those 4 teams, you either had to get kind of lucky like TCU did and win the Big 12. I don't want to offend any TCU fans out there, but
too late.
They got a little lucky to make it. Or you just had to be like a Georgia, Alabama, a team that recruited at the highest level, and it was tough to get in there, and now it's a little bit easier. And USC, if they overachieve, hey, I don't want to say they're for sure going to the college football playoff, but I feel like they have a way better shot than I thought a week ago at this time. And the fact that there are 12 teams, USC's number 13, if they just keep doing what they can be doing and winning these games, that they'll have a shot.
I think big dance is taken. I know you're not a big basketball guy.
Oh, I like basketball.
You're not really into it very much like me. Like I'm a huge basketball guy. Every time we see Jordan Moore there, every time he makes a crack about me not caring about basketball. I'm like, I go to games, like I care about basketball, but he always takes a shot at me for not caring about basketball. We have the Augie family. No daiquiris today. Yeah, if you watched us live after the game, we were recording at like 1 a.m. So we did put the podcast up if you're listening on the podcast. But if you're watching on YouTube, we went live just on my iPad, so there wasn't really good audio or anything. And we, on the walk over we picked up daiquiris on the way to the room. We got pretty much accosted by USC fans all along the way. And then we went up to my hotel room and recorded. And Shotgun had a 5 a.m. flight. So I think we went down and drank after we did our work. I put up the podcast, and we had like an hour and a half worth of drinking. And I went to bed at like 4 a.m. and then woke up and left early. It was a rough one, but definitely well worth it. It was a lot of fun just to see the USC fans, how happy they were. I think they deserved it. It was great. So, okay. So kind of looking at the game a little bit, we'll talk about some of the rewatch stuff, but one of the things I wanted to get in with you before we go into that, what this team looked like on offense, defense, and special teams. I think we wanted special teams to be better. You wanted defense to be better, certainly. And you just wanted offense to not take a big step back. And I think all three of those things sort of came true. You saw, better special teams play. Yeah, there was one missed 29-yard field goal, but the punting was exceptional. I don't remember punting like that. Kickoffs into the end zone. That last one after USC scores a touchdown. I mean, he put that like 5 yards, out of the back of the end zone. Like that was a crazy one. Big return from Zachariah Branch. Obviously the defense is better. We'll get into that. And the offense, I thought did pretty well, under the circumstances. It was a big environment. It was tough. But is there something you saw that was like concerning for the future? I mean, maybe, the lack of pass rush where it just didn't seem to get there a lot. And that might have been part of the scheme. The defensive front did give up some pressure. I mean, only 2 sacks for Miller Moss, but I could see like a Michigan's front giving them a lot of troubles. But is there anything like you were concerned about that you saw, even though we're giving them like high grades for just the way they went out and played, but some kind of concerns for it going forward? If things kind of go wrong, what do you think would be the cause of that?
Maybe the batted passes, having 2 and back-to-back plays almost at the end there when USC didn't get that 4th and 9. I didn't think that was great, but not even close to what I was expecting, and for the better USC's performance for sure. So that they got lucky with 2 of the fumbles. We can just call it that. If you put 2 on the ground, usually you'll lose at least 1. And the one with the Woody Marks pitch, that was very fortunate that Elijah Page was right there, because at that point LSU's up by 4. You give them the ball at their own or at the USC 15-yard line. Good chance they score a touchdown. At worst, they probably get a field goal unless USC is able to manufacture a turnover, and that just changes the whole complexion of the game. And then the Miller Moss strip sack, which I think was in the second quarter, that would have taken a field goal off the board for USC if LSU recovers that one. So I think they got a little fortunate there, but that happens sometimes in games. You get a little lucky. I'm not holding that against them. That'll be something that they clean up. I don't expect to see that Woody Marks play again, or if they do it, he'll probably pitch it the first time, not hesitate. That was a big mistake by him. And I didn't really feel like Miller Moss put the ball in harm's way. He had 0 turnover-worthy plays, according to Pro Football Focus. So the batted passes are probably a concern. 2 fumbles, you don't want to see that. I expected to see some growing pains from the offense, though, so I'm not like hammering for that. In the future, is that something that could hurt him, especially on the road against Michigan, a new-look offensive line? It's always tougher and a louder environment on the road to play offensive line, even though I felt like the line did a good job for the most part in Las Vegas. Is that a concern? For sure, but I have way fewer concerns than I did a week ago. That's for sure.
100%. Yeah, I don't want to be – I'm not trying to be negative or anything, but just like, hey, you don't want – there's a lot of good. And I think – I told people this, and it was funny. Yogi Roth was at – practice yesterday and was sort of like, he was at the Oregon game and he's calling this one and he was kind of grilling me on like what's going on, not grilling, but just, asking me a bunch of questions. And then he asked me, and I thought this was, and I told people this, even I would have said this in the middle of the game. And I've said it even before the game. It's like, what if USC lost this game? How do you feel? I'm like, if they played like they did, you feel really good because it's a schedule that we've talked about a bunch of times, that there's a lot of teams that are solid, that can beat you. And if you saw the sort of willy-nilly crap that was going on last year, especially on the defensive side of the ball, you're not going to be able to just outscore everybody and have a 2022 type season and win a bunch of games, win 11 games. You're going to have to play sound defense and put maybe some questionable offenses in uncomfortable positions. The teams like Iowa, we'll see if their offenses are good this year. Like, they're way better when they get the lead and doing, and they can just do what they want to do. You beat those teams by getting them down and then putting pressure on them to do things they're uncomfortable doing. They don't want to be throwing on 3rd and 8 and things like that. And you have to have a sound defense to be able to execute that. And then the offense can go out and score points. And you get like a 2-score lead and you can really put teams away. I felt like you needed to show that this team was fundamentally sound on defense, and they did that. And then still have that pop on offense. And with those wide receivers, and, Kyron Hudson just was like, comes out of nowhere. And, we've seen him and stuff before, but just to make the plays he did. And they got some big bodies. You can muscle people and push them around a little bit when Deuce Robinson's out there, and like, oh, wow, Lake McCree is going to do things. And if you got 3 dudes that are 6'5" and above out there, they're people trying to cover them. Like, you can get a lot of mismatches, and like Stanford back in the day, like 15 years ago or whatever, they had a whole bunch of big bodies, guys like that. So I feel like the eye test, I was like, if they lost this game, if the result wasn't different, USC fans should still feel good. I think LSU fans should still feel pretty good. I think they have a good team, and we'll see. They got a tough schedule and everything too. But I think you should feel good about what this team looked like. It's amazing that you got the win. Like, that's huge. It sets everything up. You can, people talk about you as a playoff team now, certainly nationally relevant, and that game at Michigan in a couple of weeks is going to be amazing. But I think if USC fans should be happy just the way this team looked, because all the talk in the offseason about getting better, it could have just been talk, and it obviously wasn't.
Totally agree. To the LSU point, I think their fans are pissed, and understandably so. They can't win a opener here for 5 years, so they're in a little bit of a different situation. I think that there was more pressure on LSU in that game. USC, they just had to look better on defense, and the rest was gravy. And then for them to look better on defense and win, you take that every day of the week. Of course, they're going to be happy. But I do agree with your point. If LSU had scored a touchdown at the end and USC wasn't able to get in the end zone at the end of the game, and they lost, but they tried really hard and they were right there at the end, the defense was better. Yeah, I think USC fans deservedly so should have felt better. But they win the game, and now you feel 10 out of 10. I keep going back to the rush defense. It's something I've written about a lot, something I've talked to the coaches and players about a lot. LSU, the whole week, they said we were going to run the ball. We went over that last week. Will Campbell, we're going to run the ball. At halftime, Brian Kelly, the head coach, tells Holly Rowe, we didn't do a good enough job running the ball in the first half. We needed to do a better job. We need the offensive line to exert their will. That's our plan. Their plan didn't change from that first half to the second half to, from what they were doing earlier in the week. Their plan was to run the ball. And then in the fourth quarter, they rushed for 3 yards. That's it. They had a better output in the third quarter, but USC made some adjustments. And in the fourth quarter, when the game was in the balance and it wasn't like they had to throw every time, they were winning for a lot of that quarter. They could have been running the ball. They were trying, and they totally rushed for 3 yards. Like, that is a major achievement, accomplishment, a massive success for USC, something that I didn't even notice until I was looking at some of the stats today. To only allow 3 rushing yards in the fourth quarter with the game in the balance like that, it's remarkable. And a few things with Lynn that really stood out on my rewatch as well. So when LSU was up by 4 in that fourth quarter and they had the ball, Braylon Shelby, 1st and 10, he explodes through the offensive line and he tackles John Emery for a loss of 5. LSU picks up 14 on the next play, and then on 3rd and 1, Gentry stuffs him. But going back to that first play with Braylon Shelby, if you watch that back, he's an edge rusher. He's lined up in the middle. It's almost like Danton Lynn knew what was coming. Shelby's lined up in the middle. LSU pulls their right guard, which opens a hole for Shelby, where if it's Kobe Pepe in there, he's probably not quick enough to go and tackle the running back 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage. But because Shelby's in the middle, he's quick enough. Loss of 5. LSU ends up punting, even though they pick up 14 on that second down play. Like, that is why Danton Lynn is worth $2 million in a housing stipend right there. Yeah. The fact that he dialed that up in that situation, it's almost like he knew what LSU was going to do, calls the perfect play, and USC, they make a mistake on second down, but they're able to overcome that and punt. Like, that didn't happen last year. That is a massive difference, and I knew Lynn was a better coach than Alex Grinch, but it's an example like that. Executing at that level, in that spot, against LSU this early, something I never would have expected. And that play, I think, really just shows everything that Lincoln Riley's done well to get USC in this position. It's credit to Danton Lynn, credit to Braylon Shelby, a guy who didn't play a whole lot last season, but put on all the weight, did a lot of the things right in the offseason to make that play. again, I go back to what I said at the beginning of the show. I did not expect it to look this good this quickly, and the outlook for this season certainly changed a lot in Las Vegas, that's for sure.
Yeah, a lot of good comments in the chat I'm putting up on the screen right now if you're watching on YouTube. And by the way, if you saw the beginning of the show, the intro, thanks to Chris Rash, who did another cool edit of that. So we added some, we're going to keep updating that, but it's been updated. We got some of the cool new interviews and stuff, and there's a torch scene in there and some different stuff. It's all pretty cool. You're like, to say like, I knew D'Anton Lynn was better than Alex Grinch, but it's like, well, it's like you thought it'd be like somewhat better, but it's like
night and day.
How much hotter is like Halle Berry than like Roseanne Barr? Like that's where we're talking at this point. Like no offense to either. I think Halle Berry's a hottie, but I like Roseanne Barr. She's funny, but
no, that was
just I didn't mean to like
just didn't expect you to say that.
I'm not. Just like, but the different. It's like, and the comments in there like they're making open field tackles, and I listened to a bunch of different podcasts and watched a bunch of different shows. Most of these people that weren't at the game, a couple of guys from Ross Dellinger and Pat Forty were there. I talked to them at the game a little bit and listened to them on their show, and how everyone is coming away impressed with how much better this defense looks. And to me, I've always talked about this, and I've harped on this for years on USC fans before you were around, Conor, just like, hey, hire people that are good at their jobs.
Yep.
And what happens when you hire like a guy that's a really good defensive coordinator? Now, it was unproven. Like I don't think we knew he was, but you kind of got a feeling that he was going to be really good. I think he's obviously really good. He's good at his job. There's some people that can just take their knowledge, figure out the situation, and it's like the Matrix. You're putting it all together. And it's not just like, hey, I'm figuring out the exact right play to call or the right look or the fact I'm going to get Braylon Shelby lined up in the middle because I know they're going to probably do this. But you also have to teach the player, not just teach them, but like get them to understand. And I felt like that was the biggest disconnect with Alex Grinch. Like maybe it'd be better in the NFL where everyone's just going to do their job. And it felt like a lot of the guys weren't sure what they were supposed to be doing. And he wasn't able to convey to them like, no, if you did what I say, it's going to work. And maybe it would have, but the players weren't able to do what he was saying. And it seems like the players are doing whatever D'Anton Lynn wants, and it's the right call. He's making the right calls, and the players are doing exactly what he wants them to do. And it just is like a breath of fresh air just seeing how much more competent USC is on defense now.
Totally agree. And I've gotten a lot of crap from people for saying, the coaching staff was telling you that this was going to happen all offseason. And my response to that would be when Lincoln Riley fired Alex Grinch, he had that press conference on the Monday after that Washington loss, and he said, we're 2 plays away from being undefeated in this conference. Like, he's a guy who he historically with USC, when it wasn't going well, he wasn't totally truthful. So now when it's going well, he's telling us it's so great. I just needed to see it on the field. And I guess I owe Lincoln Riley an apology because what he said about the camaraderie with the team and the weight gain and getting the right coaches in here, which I knew they got the right coaches in here. Again, I didn't expect it to happen this fast. Everything he said this offseason, he told us it was going to be like this. I just didn't believe him. And now here we are after 1 week and holding LSU to 20 points. I'm still very, very surprised by that output because I know it's a different LSU team for sure. I just expected to see a few more growing pains, and we really didn't see him outside of a few coverage busts and one mistake by Akili Arnold. Outside of that, they were really good.
Yeah, and I would say there were some comments in the chat about getting the ball to Zachariah Branch more. I think one of the things I really liked was it was spread out. We had a lot of questions pre-game or start of the season about, will Branch have 1,000 yards receiving, or will they? I mean, to me, it felt like this was going to be a spread around offense from the very beginning. Another thing that I felt was the right call, and that's exactly what it was. But you had 7 guys catch at least, 2 passes, and 6 of those guys went. 6 of those guys went for 40 yards or more, 45. I think Ford had 2 for 45. Robinson had 2 for 49. Lane had 3 for 50. Branch 4 for 56. McCree 5 for 56, and Hudson 5 for 85. Marks caught 3 balls for just 7 yards, but all those guys, you could say like sometimes you would see a guy make one big play, but they were making multiple plays, and maybe one was a short one, but the next one was like a chunk play, and they got a lot of different guys involved, and a lot of them were in chunk plays. And to me, that's saying that first of all, scheme wise, they're doing good things. That he's calling routes for these guys to run. that enough guys are open, and Miller Moss can find all these different dudes. It's not like he's like, okay, where's Marquise Lee? I'm just going to throw him the ball every time. I mean, it's a different dude every time, and they're rotating guys in, and that's just showing me that's an offense that's clicking, that they're doing a lot of different things. How do you prepare for that? You're like, well, we really got to shut down. We can't let Kyron Hudson do all that stuff. Well, all those other guys did stuff too. Like, I think it makes it really difficult. And if Miller Moss is smart enough and accurate enough, and like you said earlier, he didn't put the ball in harm's way. There was a few batted balls for sure, but I think it was an improved LSU front. But he was getting guys. I mean, that one throw, I think it was Jacoby Lane. He was under pressure right away.
Yeah,
I saw that in the rewatch. Like,
amazing throw.
I didn't notice that, but I really liked how they distributed the ball to everyone.
Well, that's become Miller Moss's MO a little bit. In the Holiday Bowl, he spread it all around. It's something that he does exceptionally well, and as we continue to get to know Miller more, as he plays more and more games here, I think through 2 games, that's something that has clearly been established, and I don't expect him to go away from that. If Zachariah Branch is just having some freak game and he keeps feeding Branch, would that surprise me? No, but Miller Moss has shown in those 2 starts, the Holiday Bowl and then Sunday, that he's not just locking in on one guy. He's patient in the pocket. He's able to go through his reads. He's not afraid to, I don't want to say put the ball in harm's way, but throw balls, give his receiver a chance like Kyron Hudson. And in the Holiday Bowl, the Jacoby Lane, I think, second touchdown, that was more of a jump ball. Like, Miller's not afraid to take chances, but he is very accurate, and he loves to spread the ball around. Lincoln Riley this week on Trojans Live also called him a great one, which he called Caleb Williams a great one a lot last season and the year before. And Williams, obviously, number 1 pick, Chicago Bears starter, captain, a great one for sure. To hear Miller Moss described in the same way, it's got to be encouraging if you're a USC fan. It seems like he's following, at least through 2 games, in the footsteps of some of those great quarterbacks. There's a lot of work to do, for sure. He's not quite there yet. But I felt like he performed in a really, really different way against LSU than he did against Louisville. The touchdowns were different, but it was a professional kind of start, in my opinion. And he didn't put the ball in harm's way when he threw it. He had the 1 strip sack. It was just he won in a different way than he did against Louisville. He showed some versatility. Looks like USC got another great quarterback, which isn't a huge surprise with Lincoln Riley. But I think I had some questions, and other people did too. Like, yeah, it was great in the Holiday Bowl, but what's it going to look like this season? And Miller's 2 for 2, and I don't really feel or have any reasons to be like, oh, I'm nervous about him. He looks awesome.
Yeah, his first 2 starts were against ranked teams
and
had amazing numbers. What was he, 70-something% in this one or whatever? Pretty crazy. All right, so we did the rewatch, and I told you guys about it. I know most of you, or a lot of you guys, get to watch at home. We don't get to. So yes, did we see the Kyron Hudson catches a zillion times in the press box? Sure. Yes. But for the most part, the disconcerting signals, you get that, you're like, what is that? And watching the TV copy, did we get to see Kirk Herbstreit's dog no, we didn't get to see that, but then we get to see it on the rewatch. So I'm going to give you a few notes that I saw from this, and then you can give some too, and then we can kind of discuss whatever you want. But the one thing, there was a lack of, when there's like a 3rd and 2 or a 3rd and 1 or whatever, and so many times you would hear, first down and more when USC was on defense. It was like the handoff. It's not like, USC was tackling the guy and maybe he got the first down, but it was like a yard over. There wasn't there's a huge hole up the middle and the 3rd and 1 play turns into a 26-yard run or whatever like that. Didn't hear a lot of those. I was harping on that the linebackers were going to be more productive. Matt Entz, national championship winning head coach, he's like, I'm now the head coach of the linebackers. I was like, at that point, I'm like, the linebackers are going to be good. And I think they were really good. They made I think the majority of the tackles, which is what you want. But I thought they played really well. And I was happy with what I felt like going into that. It's funny, on the broadcast, they had mentioned when they talked about Elijah Page, did you see the photo of him at practice? Chris's photo, they mentioned that. It wasn't even a crazy photo. It's just, he's just a big dude
next to a small dude.
Yeah, and it went viral. Chris's photo went viral, and the fact that they talked about it on the broadcast was pretty funny. But Kamari Ramsey and even and Jalen Smith too. There were some big tackles. Kamari Ramsey more early in the game, and Jalen Smith more late in the game. I think a couple for Ramsey, open field, 3rd down, he makes the stop, and it's like, okay, now they got to punt. And those were not tackles that would be made. Someone could be in position, but then they don't make the play, and it's the move the sticks and keep going out there. And I've already mentioned that it was the fourth quarter, that Moss to Lane pass where he was under pressure right away and sort of almost like a sidearm thing right in front of, like right to where Lane was. Like, it was crazy. Even rewatching the second Hudson catch where he got targeted on, if you're watching, they showed like an overhead view. I mean, there was a defender long and underneath, and like Moss had to put it like in between those guys and put it in a good spot, and then Hudson makes the incredible catch and do this. And it's funny, Jacoby Lane, that TD catch that he made when there was the offsides, looking on the replay again, it looks like the DB had his jersey, grabbing onto his jersey before he caught that ball. So some of the catches that were made by the wide receivers were good. And, sometimes there's good coverage. Sometimes it's just like getting messed with by the DBs, and they still were able to make the plays. But anyway, those are a few notes I took from any notes you have you want to do or anything you want to discuss from that.
I just thought LSU was really stupid too, and in the booth or in the press box that came through. But like Kelly's arguing about the disconcerting signals call when LSU has the ball, they're following possession. So like a bunch of time has elapsed since, and he's still yelling at the refs, and then they get a delay of game penalty to start their next series on offense. He's so frustrated. I felt like he didn't know that rule, and that hurt them. USC, of course, goes on to score their first touchdown after that drive, and there was a brutal pass interference penalty against Lane. And I mean the Kyron Lacey stuff with the guns, and then USC gets to kick or get way better field position, and Zachariah Branch has the big return. That was an error that I thought was dumb. So USC, like, I know it's not an LSU show, like USC was just more ready to go, and
yeah, I think they're a better coach team.
Yeah, they made fewer mistakes, and that was something else that surprised me. I felt like USC, they had so many new pieces that we would understand, not from a penalty perspective, but if they just weren't quite ready, I would get that. Where with LSU, they're new too, but to lose those openers in the fashion that they did, especially 2 years ago against Florida State, and then getting kind of embarrassed last year, like I felt like, okay, like, hey, we're done losing this first game. We have a point to prove. I felt like they had a lot of momentum coming into this one because they were so angry, and USC was so newly constructed to what they were last year, and that just did not come through at all. USC looked like the team that was on a mission and had a lot to prove, and that was something that surprised me as well.
All right. Sorry, I was doing something over here. Anything else on your rewatch that you wanted to discuss?
I can highlight one other play.
Okay.
So with 2:26 left in the fourth quarter, LSU's driving before they kick their field goal. USC's up 20-17. It's 1st and 10 LSU at the 16-yard line. And I thought Joe Sloan called an awesome play, the offensive coordinator for LSU. It's a run to the left, and LSU has it blocked really, really well. It's, what's his name? Emery running to the left, and then the only guy in his way is Jalen Smith, and Mason Taylor, the tight end for LSU. It looks like he's going to block Smith, and Emery's going to go in for a touchdown. Smith somehow sheds the block and tackles Emery only for a gain of 2. And Reese Davis on the broadcast said that saved a touchdown. A little bit debatable. To me, I thought he did save a touchdown too because he was the only guy there. And to me, I just couldn't not think of last year, Ryan, where it's like, okay, a running back getting outside the tackles, and there's a blocker to get that last USC player. That's a touchdown every day of the week. And Jalen Smith, who was probably the best tackler on the team last year, one of them, he sheds the blocker, makes a great tackle. It was just so different than what we saw last season. And another credit to Danton Lynn. I felt like that was a really underrated play. I wrote about it today. That was one of those plays in a game where we're not going to talk about that years from now, but that's something that made USC win this game, because if LSU scores a touchdown there, who knows if USC is able to go down and get points. It's different when it's tied compared to when you're down.
Yeah, no, and there was a lot, just so many stops where LSU could have made it a 2-score game and didn't. And some of the drives where USC's offense sort of like couldn't get out of their own way. Then they got it going, obviously, in the fourth quarter. So just really impressive overall by what they were able to do. Like, there was rewatching it again, you're like, you just remember being in the press box, like, there's so many things that could have happened that pretty much would have put the game away. And they kept fighting it off. They you didn't give up. You're just not going to let – I was just playing beach volleyball this morning. You just don't let the ball drop. It's a great play. You're just like dive and get everything. You're just like, keep it alive, keep it going. And you get it back over, and you live for another day. And USC kept living for another day, and then the offense got rolling, and that's what it was going there. I do want to talk about, we got a lot of questions to get to, so we'll talk more about the game. Maybe real quick, we'll do some Utah State stuff because USC has a short week. Utah State coming in, kind of a weird, it's a weird matchup, like overall, with the head coach, and I'm blanking on his name, but he was like, I think he was an assistant at Oregon when Oregon won the Pac-12 championship in the Coliseum during the COVID year. Bryson Barnes was the backup quarterback, but the starter got hurt, and Barnes, played, the pig farmer played against USC last year. I mean, losing your head coach a couple months ago, that's a weird sort of situation. This is a 8 p.m. game in the Coliseum, so that's kind of weird. But just in general, like, this is a team that has pretty veteran offensive line. They got some skilled dudes that their running back got injured in the first game. I forget that Jalen, the leading wide receiver, he was like a third-team All-American for some publication last year, but had a 1,000-yard receiver that's back. They did bring some veterans back. They got some playmakers on offense, and I mean, I don't know. It's a team that's like can be kind of dangerous, but they were messing around with George Mason, an FCS team last week, and then blow them away in the second half. But Bryson Barnes already had a lot of success against USC. He's not a guy that's intimidated. He's got some dudes to throw to. They got a pretty good offensive line. I mean, it's a team that could put up some resistance, especially with USC potential hangover, coming off that big win and a short week for the Trojans.
I don't know how much of Barnes we'll see because even though Spencer Petras, the starter for Utah State, got hurt and I don't think finished that game against Robert Morris, they released their depth chart this week, and Petras was listed as the starter over Barnes. So we'll see. Maybe they're being dishonest on that. Ryan, I think the only way USC is in any inkling of trouble is if it's a hangover situation like you talked about. They did celebrate on the field like they won the national championship a little bit, which, to their credit, a lot went wrong last year. There had to be a huge weight lifted off their shoulders, USC, after beating LSU, especially with people like me who didn't believe in them. So I get the celebration. I get why they were so excited. The only way I think Utah State even covers the spread this week is if USC just isn't ready to go and they exerted all their energy in that LSU game and for whatever reason they're just not ready for this Utah State team. And being not ready doesn't mean they're going to lose. You can be not ready and still win. Maybe Utah State scores early or something and USC wakes up. I think from an X's and O's perspective, especially with what we saw from that defense for USC, that they're going to be outmatched Utah State, and it's all about USC's mentality, in my opinion. The fact that USC's defense looked as good as it did raises the floor so much. Like, you're not going to have a San Diego State coverage bust like USC did last season in their opener, and it just didn't look good. San Jose State, yeah. What did I say?
San Diego.
Oh, yeah, okay. San Jose State. It's just different this year, and the defense – I expect to be a lot better against Utah State like it was against LSU. I think the Aggies will have a tough time moving the ball. USC, the only way they're in trouble at all is if they get in their own way, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think some of the things, just when you're playing at LSU, like they have big, strong, fast dudes that are SEC caliber athletes. I mean, and a lot of people, even from the LSU side, were saying USC was out physical in LSU, and I think that's what's going to make the biggest mismatch, where you just have way bigger and stronger and faster X's than their O's. And if you're Utah State and you're struggling with Robert Morris for a little bit, I feel like this is one of those things where you can force a lot of turnovers, a lot of those, like, that Zachariah Branch is a touchdown in that game. People in the chat were talking about they can't believe the kicker got him. The kicker looked pretty athletic, but yeah, I thought they kept a safety back, but I don't know if they did. But yeah, you feel like this is one of those things where a lot of that stuff that just worked for like 5 yards would work for like 40 yards in this game. And you're not going to get the same kind of pressure on Miller Moss. I mean, you had like I think the leading tackler was like a Division II transfer, and they're one of their linebackers, and that's great. And, and I think there's a lot of cool stories there, but this is just a team. Maybe last year you could point to all those things and say these could be problems. I don't think they're going to be problems this year unless there's like more of the hangover kind of thing. So get out to the Coliseum Saturday night, the House of Victory tailgate.
Woo!
Boom, we're going to be there early. I think they're still starting at 3 hours early. We'll see if they'll start it a little earlier or something. And we're going to interview So we're trying to figure out our House of Victory player interview stuff. So Thursday evenings, we're still going to do our Tunnel Vision show with our new intro, which is going to be great. But it looks like what we're going to do is get Mason Cobb on Thursday at 6:30. So we'll probably just start the show at 6:30, have Mason Cobb on, and then keep it rolling afterwards. We'll do like our regular sort of Tunnel Vision show, but we'll interview Mason. He had the interception late in the game.
Yep. His first one is a Trojan.
First interception is a Trojan. One of those guys, like you're like, who's going to benefit the most from Danton Lynn besides like everybody on defense? But Mason Cobb would be like sort of one of those guys. Having Matt Entz, I would definitely want to talk to him about that because Entz just seems like a guy that's not going to, he's not going to let stuff go wrong. He's just going to be like, hey, we're going to make this work. So anyway, but yeah, so make sure you check that out on Thursday. And also, if you're not a member, USCfootball.com, we have a great sale going on right now, 60% off an annual membership. So go check it out. Tons of great stuff. We've had a whole bunch of people sign up. The Trojan fan base is very excited. So much great content going up there. Chris's Goats Notes were amazing. Just, gives you, if you were at the game, you would learn a lot from Chris's Goats Notes. And if you weren't there, you're going to get a feel like you were in Las Vegas.
One other thing with Utah State, Ryan, to that game. Let's get Amos Talele a bunch of reps at right guard. Let's see what you have with some of these depth pieces, guys who might not play a lot at the end of the year, but maybe if they get an audition here against Utah State, they impress, maybe they can carve out a role. I want to see a lot, especially from some of the younger guys on defense, like maybe Jide Abasiri in the middle of that defensive line. What does he look like? It's an awesome chance, a game like this, because USC doesn't really have any more of these, to get some of those younger guys, some of those players like Anthony Beavers, who didn't play a ton in that first game. I think he was only in for one snap. He's an older guy, but guys who want to play more, stake their claim for the future, this is a great opportunity for them too against Utah State. And
that's a good point, and I totally forgot to mention that. And there has been some talk about that, getting Jaden Mayava to play.
Yeah, the great example.
One of the best, one of the deficiencies when you're not putting teams away like you should, and you're giving up, a whole bunch of points to San Jose State, and you can't put Colorado away, and you don't get the backups in. So that's goal number one. I mean, you got to win the game, obviously, but like goal number 2 or 1A is, do what you need to do, put the game out of reach, and let people play and get experience. And that's a great way to do it. Blackie Chan Gaming says, shout out to Shotgun for field level video. He did not take that. That was Chris Trevino.
Shaka did take some awesome photos, though.
Yeah, great photos. He had an amazing shot of that Kyron Hudson catch that was going a little viral and stuff. So that was a lot of fun. All right, why don't we do this? Let's take a quick break, and we will come back and answer all your questions. Back in a minute. Alrighty, we're back here on the Peristyle Podcast. Thanks so much for listening and watching. If you're watching on YouTube, we got voicemails. Why don't we start with this one?
Morning. This is Giovanni from the 562. Voice still a little hoarse from all the yelling on Sunday night. But damn, what a win. This is for the Cilantro Boys.
Oh.
Chris, it was great to meet you and your girlfriend at the meetup at Flankers on Friday. Question for you guys. How do we feel the real impact on 2025, a win of not just LSU, but a win at the Big House would do for this class? Look forward to hearing from you guys, and fight on.
I saw they put the flanker shout out in there, so it was great. But sorry, that was a recruiting question. But real quick, we can give our thoughts and then let the Cilantro Boys answer it later too. I'll leave it for Chris.
Can't hurt. That's what I'd say, especially USC missed out on a couple guys to Florida State. I wonder if some of those players are rethinking things.
Yeah.
The beauty of winning on the field and showing that vision that Lincoln Riley's talked about, he no longer has to say we're going to play great defense here. He can say we're playing great defense here. Behind the scenes, is there some stuff that still needs to be worked out with NIL and getting all on the same page with that? Of course there is, and I think a lot of schools are dealing with that. But winning, that helps a great deal, and that can make a big difference for this 2025 class. And if you beat Michigan, then all bets are off. I think for sure USC would be in a way better position recruiting, and they'd just be in a way better position overall if you're 3-0.
Yeah, I mean, individual recruits just keep in mind, they don't really give a crap about a single game. Like, it helps. It just, but USC can be in a different class by beating LSU, maybe going on the road and beating Michigan. If you're in the playoffs or you're in that kind of talk and you're, now you're more nationally relevant. USC became nationally irrelevant last year, and I think that's what hurt in recruiting more than an individual win or loss. But certainly it helps a lot. But we'll save that one for the Cilantro Boys too. Here's one about you, Conor. You're gonna love this probably.
Let it rip.
This is for Ryan and crew, the flagship show, the Peristyle Podcast. Eddie from Orange. Hopefully Conor's there, unless he's hiding. unless you left him in the ditch off the 15 freeway next to the Baker exit somewhere. Ryan.
I did not.
I don't know about this 15 losses you thought USC would have this year, Conor. Doesn't look like it. You need to apologize and grow your beard out. Do both. When will we get an apology for Conor? That's the question. When will we get an apology? Eddie from Orange.
Yeah, definitely apologize for picking the LSU spread. Hey, my 7-5 prediction, that could still happen. I'm just kidding. It looks a lot different than I expected. And off the top of the show, I talked about it a little bit. I really didn't think a transformation could happen this quickly, and that was probably foolish of me with the era of the transfer portal and Danton Lynn, what he did at UCLA last season. I thought the tough schedule mixed with some of the guys on the defensive line who needed to take a step forward. I wasn't sure how fast USC with this tough schedule would be able to get those guys up to speed, but they did a great job of that. Something else I underestimated, I do think the camaraderie of the team and the togetherness, that was something that I sort of poo-pooed a little bit, and I didn't really know how much talent the team had to be able to really go out and win at a high level, and it seems like that camaraderie has made a massive difference. Who said after that, I think it was Elijah Page after the LSU game, we talked to him yesterday, he said, everyone celebrated after we beat LSU, which made me think that last year after some wins, not everyone was celebrating. It seems like everyone's on the same page. And then Lincoln Riley, I think he offered some little hints that he liked his team more than I did, opening up that scrimmage to the media. That was one of them. And then at halftime, when Holly Rose interviewing him right after Michael Lance missed that 29-yard field goal, halftime of LSU, Riley's so calm, so cool, collected. I talked to Jack about that interview, Jack Smith, our intern, and he said, and I agree, like, I think Riley thought, we have LSU, we can beat them, that we're right in this. It's tied right now, but we have a damn good chance to win this game. And I think I underestimated Riley's confidence a little bit. So I still think the schedule is hard, and I want to see what the offensive line looks like in the big house. If USC they make some of those turnover-worthy plays like they did against LSU, it could be a different story on the road. So I want to see what that looks like. But defense travels, as we all know, all college football fans know about that. And look at what UCLA did last year against Utah on the road. They kept that Bruins team that was awful on offense in a game where they probably shouldn't have been in based on how bad that offensive performance was. So I think the floor is a lot higher. The ceiling's probably higher, too, for this team than I anticipated. Again, I've said it a lot on this show. I'll say it again. I am blown away by how quickly the defensive turnaround has happened. And, yes, it's only one game, but last year was so bad, right?
My God, so bad.
Like for people who are like, it's only one game, let's see what happens. It's just different. It's just different.
I blame you, Conor. It was your first year covering the team with us. Nicholas, sad news. Emory Jr. from LSU, the running back that had that 39-yard run, ACL injury in practice, out for the year. Unfortunately, he was a guy that was a really highly ranked, I think a 5-star running back coming out there. Was playing last year. I think he got hurt, and then was their number 3 guy, and then he was the one that probably looked the best for LSU and really gave them a spark. Really, the only great plays they had in the run game, I think, came from him.
This now gives Caden Durham a chance, the 4th-string running back for LSU, a true freshman at Duncanville High School, who I was really high on coming out of high school to play.
Of course you were.
Yep, and I thought with all those LSU running backs not really separating themselves, we might see him against USC. That didn't happen. He's a kid I followed for a while. Very unfortunate news about Emory. He's one of those 5-star guys where it just didn't work out, even though he showed some flashes against USC. But this now gives another guy a chance. And if Durham goes and has a great season, Brian Kelly, he'll be facing the heat. Why didn't he play this guy earlier?
Yeah. All right, here's another voicemail.
Hey, Ryan. I am so happy that we have a defense that can tackle. That's where they're supposed to be. I mean, they gave up underneath passing, a lot of yardage, but they really was tough on the run, and that was so nice to see. I have faith in Miller Moss. So happy as a Trojan fan to win. It's an opponent that's ranked higher than us from the SEC. They're going to talk about us because, the media wants us to be good. It's, football is better when SC is better. Fight on, go Trojans. Curtis from Moreno Valley.
Curtis happy?
I don't blame him.
Should be happy.
He should be after that defensive performance. Tackling certainly stands out. And I think how egregious the missed tackles were last year. Like, I think USC had 8 tackles. Let me check Pro Football Focus, but their initial grade of it, I can check here in a second. They had them for 8 missed tackles. I think I remember 1 or 2.
Yeah.
Like last year, we would check the missed tackles, and it was like, oh, they only had like 12? I could have guessed it was 20.
I thought they counted 20 myself.
Because they were so bad at that. And, oh, man, night and day. I mean, we talked about it in the press box. You tweeted out my quote. I can't believe how well they're tackling, and I've never heard Conor say that before. It was really a remarkable sight to be seen, and still, I mean, I'm a little speechless at how good it was, seriously.
Yeah. We had a comment, where was it from? Chris said, I look orange. I'm not. There's a political comment. I'm not going to say. You probably can guess what it is. I was probably the lighting. Like I said, I came in here hot. I played volleyball all morning, and then my buddy, the Hermosa Open is starting, and one of the guys I play with was doing a qualifier match. So I went to see him, and then it was like, it's like noon. I'm at the beach. I'm like, oh crap, the show starts at 1. I got to like ride my bike home, scarf some food, shower, and then get to the studio. So I came in pretty hot.
8 missed tackles after their regrade too, so that stayed the same.
So they stayed the same, yeah. But there was, I think if the tackle was missed, there was someone to clean it up afterwards.
Yeah.
I feel like last year, if a tackle was missed, all hope was lost. Like it's a touchdown. Like you miss a tackle and there was nobody there to kind of help clean things up. This was more guys swarming to the ball. And if you miss a tackle, you probably slowed them down enough that someone else got to get them, So it just didn't seem like there was these egregious busts, and what we saw last year was absolutely insane.
Yeah, I don't want to focus too much on last year, but watching that game, it just makes you think, what the hell were they doing last season? From the entire operation, like why weren't they bigger last year? If it's not easy, but if you can transform your whole team in one offseason, get everyone bigger and be that much better against the run, push around an LSU offensive line that has multiple NFL quality players on it. Like, why did you do that a year ago? Crazy.
Yeah, I know the highest IQ in our chat is Kenneth, mostly because he just said exactly what I did. So he must be pretty smart. He said there was like when you missed the tackle, you had 2 or 3 other Trojans there to clean up the play. Yeah,
high IQ comment.
He's a very smart man because he said exactly what I was saying. Eddie from Orange sent a text.
Woo!
It's for Conor.
Another one? Didn't we just hear his voicemail?
I think so. Don't let the P keep you down because you're the hero the P deserves, but not the one it needs right now. So we'll hunt you because you can take it because you're not our hero, Eddie from Orange. He needs to use like the contraction for your sometimes or not use it. It's just, different. Yeah.
I can definitely take it. Let me have it. That's why right when that game went final, I posted on the Peristyle, hey, hand up, let me have it.
Yeah, I apparently, and we got so many freaking questions and comments, even when we did the live event for the Trojan Coaches Club, talking about Paul Feinbaum. And I mean, I always told people, like, who gives a crap, like, what a talking head says? He's not covering the team. He's throwing out some opinions out there. He might be right. What if Lincoln Riley stunk? He's like, see, I told you, he was terrible. They should have fired him or whatever. But he's not someone that's on the boots on the ground here and has like detailed, it's just he's throwing out his opinion. He covers the SEC. He's going to like throw shade on anyone that could steal some of the spotlight from, he'd rather have Ole Miss have a lot of spotlight than USC or Oregon or something, the Ohio State's going to be there and Alabama and Georgia are going to be there, but he's, shilling for the entire conference. And if USC is like a good story, like that might take away from something, if Florida like had a resurgence, which they're not. So I didn't think people should have given a crap, but he comes back and has to say like, yep, I was wrong. Riley did a lot of things. He listened, he fixed the problems that he had and it looks good. So, kudos to Feinbaum for doing that, but there's so many USC fans who were like so mad at him, but then they were happy to see him sort of mea culpa, whatever afterwards.
I think USC fans just want a West Coast version of Paul find, Bob, someone with that platform to talk up their team, and instead they'd have to deal with a guy who's just taking a lot of shots at Riley. I still can't believe he said Deion Sanders would be a better spot or be a better coach at USC than Riley. That just crazy talk.
Yeah, that was some of that stuff was just ridiculous. I mean, I think Nebraska is going to put a world of hurt on that. There's some big Big Ten games. So for USC fans, you are now part of the Big Ten. Who's the only team? The biggest win of the Big Ten came from you. And so you should feel proud about that. You know, any win over the SEC, when you get an opportunity to do it, you want to pull a trigger and do it. So USC gets that feather in the cap for the Big Ten. Boom. Michigan's got a chance this week because they're playing Texas. I think Nebraska is going to roll over Prime and Colorado. We'll see. But there's some big games this weekend. I think the Minnesota one, it's like you lose to an ACC team, last second field goal that they hooked it or whatever. Or pushed it. I forget what he did, but just missed it by a little bit. But yeah, I mean, there's some big games that you want to be rooting for. USC is going to beat Utah State, but it would help if Michigan beats Texas, and that matchup in Ann Arbor in a couple weeks is going to be really exciting. You definitely want Nebraska to beat the crap out of Colorado. You're going to play Nebraska later. So I think some of the teams on USC schedule look good and some of them look kind of but that Nebraska game, the Penn State game, I mean, those teams have looked pretty good so far. So yeah, but it's like what you got to root for now that you're in the Big Ten. It's a little bit different.
Oh, it's a lot different. And if Michigan somehow beats Texas, which I would be very shocked if they did, that changes the complexion of that game even more. Even if they lose, it's still going to be a great game, great test for USC. But all of a sudden they turn around and beat Texas. That changes everything for me. We
had a Blackie Chan in the chat. We had like 300 people in the chat, by the way. Holy crap. Thank you for
in
the afternoon. We love this. This will probably be our normal time on Wednesdays, like 1. We're kind of finalizing times, but if we can get a player Thursday evenings before our live show, that's going to be good too. So we'll do that. But me and Conor do the show like heading into practice. Blackie Chan Gaming, I was happy that T-Bob gave USC its flowers. This is, if you don't know who T-Bob is, he's part of a LSU like post-game show called Whiskey and Wine, and it's part of ESPN Radio in Baton Rouge. I've been on with him and like Jacob Hester. I think they do a show. I've been on their show talking about USC or whatever in Baton Rouge. This was the crazy. You just go watch it. It was like the craziest thing I've ever seen. Like they're just like we're like trying to be journalists here. We want to give you like what we think. We're not like rooting and like crying if USC loses. We're trying to like give you, our assessment of what's going on, good, bad, and different, whatever it is. We want to tell you how it is. We're trying to be good journalists, good reporters, and keep you guys informed, what we hear, what's going on. These guys are just like super fans. He played there and stuff, and they were just F-bombing every other word, saying things that you would not say. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how they haven't been like canceled or whatever. Like I don't think you could get away with some of the stuff that they were saying out here, like pornographic stuff. Like there was a lot, but it was freaking hilarious. I'm like, it's like the greatest show I've ever seen. I'm driving home with Chris Trevino in the car, and we're just listening to it with his girlfriend. We were just dying laughing at some of the stuff he said. He was going off about, I don't want to be here. He was so mad that he was in Vegas because he wants to be home. He's like, I got 3 kids. I'm at pool parties and stuff. And his co-host was like, pools are cool. And it was something like that. It was just, it was so funny. But you got to check it out. But he did give USC its props. He said, like, USC out-hit us. They were physical. He's like, he hated the fact that a West Coast team came and, like, pushed him around. But that was a good take, but it was it was so hilarious. I don't know if you got to see that one. It was crazy.
I saw some of it on social media and talked to Chris and Jack about it yesterday, but I got to watch it maybe tonight.
Oh, my God. It's like you will be dying laughing. It's great. So any more, you can put questions in the chat too. We'll get to those. We have more questions, emails, and text to get to. But Frank in Sacramento, have you ever seen corners that defend as well as LSU? There were 3 balls caught by SC receivers that the LSU defender pulled out for incompletions, and 1 was a TD. Yeah, Hudson had one in his hit from the press box. Looked like, oh, that's a touchdown. And you see the replay, and the defender popped it out. But
yeah, well, that was good, but their defensive backs also sucked, I thought, too. Like, the pass interference penalties, that was clearly their weak spot on that defense.
There was a couple like just grabbing the heck out of guys.
Yeah, and in my opinion, their safety play, that targeting hit on Hudson was stupid, and I forget if that was Major Burns or not. No, that was their other safety. But then Major Burns takes his helmet off after USC stopped on the 4th and 9, which pushed LSU back. Like, not only were those guys making mistakes during the game, but in between plays, they were making mistakes too. So I wasn't really impressed with that secondary at all. But to Frank's point, they did a nice job of knocking some balls away and not finishing plays. That was good. But I felt like the bad outweighed the good from LSU's defensive backs. And I'm interested to see how USC plays against a team with better defensive backs in the future.
Trojan Kevin says, what true freshman makes the biggest impact this season?
Well,
Any?
I'm trying to think who's
really
did anything in this game. Am I missing someone obvious?
No.
I don't think so. Maybe against Utah State, Brian Jackson, if he gets in, I could see him. But, I mean, you're getting no one on the offensive line. There's no true freshman quarterback. Jackson's the running back. Tight end, maybe Walker Lyons. He's on the depth chart, so we could shout him out. Him and Jackson are both third string.
Like Xavier Jordan, but he's not. I mean,
He's
there's
not
so
on
many
the
wide
depth chart.
receivers.
Defensively, a lot of the good players were on the scout team, so
Yeah.
I'd probably say Walker Lyons later in the year, maybe just because he has the most talent, I'd say, out of any of the guys on that offense. Like him and Jackson are there on the depth chart, but I think Lyons is a little bit more talented. I don't really know though. I don't think we're gonna see too many true freshmen this year.
I don't think so. Miguel has a little bit longer email. He says, hello, Inside Troy team. I have some comments and questions regarding retiring numbers. I've seen a lot of chat online lately regarding why Mason Cobb is still wearing number 13, while that is a former Heisman Trophy winner's number that is usually retired. Well, I personally don't have a problem with it, especially with him looking like a great linebacker we initially thought he was out of the portal. Some people do. My question is, what are your guys' opinion on retiring Heisman Trophy winning numbers? He says, I'm all for it. But eventually you run into issues with that because usually Heisman winners are great players that wear the best numbers, usually single digits because that's what the best players on the team want. So eventually kids will want to wear a specific number they want and won't be able to because it's retired. My main point is if you have a few select single-digit numbers available, I don't think that it helps you landing specific recruits. This may be irrelevant to you guys, but I was curious your thoughts. Thanks. Keep up the great work. Fight on, from Miguel.
I believe in retiring numbers, but I hear his recruiting point, and I don't know. What do you think? You know more about the history than I do.
I mean, I think it's when you have this much history, I think it's sort of a flex that we like. You say, now it sucks that you don't retire defensive numbers, but that's something that can be reused. But your flex is you only get your number retired if you win the Heisman. Like if you win the best trophy in the sport, that's when we'll retire your number. Now USC's had 8 of them. I think only 2 single digits, right? Carson Palmer and Reggie Bush, 3 and 5. It was weird. I saw yesterday at practice, someone was wearing 3, but it was like a scout team defensive back. Yeah.
How dare they?
I know. It's like, 3, like that's weird. I'm fine with this one. I like a lot of the traditions. Yes, the sport is changing a bunch. And we've seen people wear, Jordan Addison came in and wore number 3. So it almost makes it like it's even more special. Darnell Bing got to wear 20 for, Mike Garrett. So I'm cool with this. I think it's more of a flex that like, oh, you retired that guy. He won the bucket. Yeah, we only retire Heisman winners. So I would go with it. Keep going like it is.
Me too.
Scott Houston wrote in, after reviewing the massive win over LSU, what aspect of the team would you like to see improve going forward? Personally, I think the Utah State game provides an opportunity for USC to get the running game going. The Trojans had just 69 rushing yards on Sunday. That said, it's very difficult to run the ball against elite SEC and Big Ten opponents. Scott in Houston.
I'd say the running game and then the pass rush. USC really didn't get to Nussmeier very much, but it seems like that was part of the game plan. I was critical of Anthony Lucas after the game in the immediate aftermath on the podcast we did, but after rewatching the game and talking to some people, it sounds like the game plan more was to just keep the running game in check for LSU and let Nussmeier go and take the short throws. So we'll see what the pass rush looks like against Utah State. I'm sure it'll be a lot better. And going forward, I expect it to be a little bit better too. You're not going to be playing against 2 NFL-level tackles every week for sure. The running game, I think, is the biggest thing. I don't know how you can go about like how sustainable it is. USC didn't really run the ball in the Holiday Bowl. They didn't run the ball against LSU very well, even though Marks scored the 2 touchdowns. I think you need a more consistent running game to really have a great chance this season. But it's nitpicking. I thought they did a lot of good things really well in that first game.
Yeah, I think they're going to generate pressure because there was a lot of activity, and there was someone that posted like a video of Anthony Lucas, and even though he wasn't getting like sacks and things, he was definitely active and doing things. So I think that'll probably work itself out. But you want to get actual pressure, more pressure on the quarterbacks. On the run game, it's more about running when you're expected to run. I think USC did a good job of running that was set up by the pass. So when Miller Moss was hitting those chunk plays, they could sneak it to Woody and then and make a big play that way. And so I feel like the short yardage situation, they had some problems with that. So just kind of run when it's the time to run. People expect you to run, and you can execute and make it happen. Let's go to Chris. Do you think the softer coverage on wideouts will change during the season? We gave up, in my opinion, way too many pass yards.
Well, bend, don't break.
Yeah. It's a lot of empty calories, I think.
If you only score 20 points, your opponent, that's a damn good output. So I wouldn't be too concerned about that. They adjusted so well. Kyron Lacey didn't have a freaking catch in the second half. Nussmeier did a nice job of spreading the ball around, especially in the first half. But Lacey was 7 for however many yards he had and a touchdown in the first half. And then in the second half, he doesn't catch a pass. So I wouldn't be too critical of the pass defense. I just think that was part of the game plan. I expect USC to be a little bit more aggressive in the future for sure if Danton Lynn feels like that gives his team the best chance to win. And I think against LSU, he felt like playing off the receivers a little bit and just containing the run gave USC the best chance to win, and that's exactly what happened. So I wouldn't be too critical of that. If it continues week in and week out, could we harp on it more in the future? For sure. But you beat LSU, and you only allowed 20 points. I wouldn't be too critical of any aspect of the defense.
No. This is like if someone throws for like 600 yards and they don't score any points, that's fine. I think the plan was there was a lot of emphasis on stopping the run. LSU wanted to run the ball, so the fact that you're going to take away what the other team wanted to do is significant. But it's also going to leave you, vulnerable in other spots where they can. And I thought Nussmeier made a lot of good throws. But the game plan being when you can execute the bend but don't break, that we saw like even the Pete Carroll era and things like that, you're not giving up the huge chunk play that just goes for a touchdown when you miss one tackle. They were keeping everything in front of them. And they were saying, okay, LSU, you got a first down there. Well, you got to do it again 3 more times. Can you do it? All right, you did it again. You got to do it 3 more times. And you had to make plays. If you made 2 mistakes in a row, you were out. And we would get to that critical third down, and they would either make a big open field tackle or Nussmeier would eventually miss one of the receivers, and that's what sort of the game plan was. So you're going to give up yards along the way, but you are keeping that team from getting the big play, getting the easy touchdown, and you're going to say, all right, show me, you can execute at a super high level time after time after time. So I wouldn't worry, Chris, too much about this gave up this many yards, like whatever. They didn't give up that many points, and I think that's part of the strategy there.
Totally agree.
Let's go to the next comment in the YouTube chat from Michael. Why are they able to install a pro-style offense in the same 20 hours per week? And listen, this is not a Grinch defense. I'm ecstatic to have Coach Lynn.
Don't get the question.
I think he's talking about so Grinch's defense you couldn't figure out in the 20 hours a week or whatever, but there's complicated offenses that you do. I mean, to me, everything, I think I talked to Norm Chow like 20 years ago or something about this. You have to have an offense that when he was trying to do was an offense that looks complicated to the defense, but is not complicated for the players he's asking to run it. So it's simple for you, but looks complicated. So that's part of the genius of how you make college stuff work. You only have 20 hours a week. You can't have a playbook this thick. Paul Hackett tried to do that, and it wasn't working. Like a 5-year plan to the 5th-year seniors are going to get what you're supposed to do. Like that's not going to work. Nowadays, you need the people come, especially the way people are coming in through the portal. I think Danton Lynn talks about slow install, and he was going to take his time over the spring and then over the fall and make sure everyone gets it. But it has to be easy enough for them to digest and be able to just go out and play. So I think there's plenty of offenses that are too complicated that people don't get. I was watching Florida State. DJU didn't seem like he knew what was going on there. I don't know if it's because it's complicated offense or whatever. But I don't think it's an offense-defense thing. I think it's just you have to have something that you can easily convey to your players and get them to get it. But it can't be so basic that the other team gets it too. You have to make it so it's kind of confusing for them, but also not confusing for you is kind of my thoughts on that.
And that's the whole aspect of what makes Lynn so great. His defense, it's like 8 base plays, and then they do so many different things out of those 8 base plays. At least that's what the players say. So, it's not only 8 plays. They're doing a lot of different things, which is why the offense can't tell what they're doing. But the basic part of it comes down to 8 things that they do. If you can get those 8 things down, then you're going to be able to get everything else. And that's why I think USC looks so prepared. Lynn's a great teacher, but his scheme is basic to learn. But to your point, it's really confusing if you're on offense. And that's what makes the best football coaches. That's what makes the best schemes. That's why Lynn is getting paid $2 million a year. He's pretty damn good at this.
Yeah, and it's funny how different, if you remember when Graham Harrell was around. I mean, he installed the whole offense in 3 spring practices, if I'm not mistaken. Like, they would go through the whole thing. His thing was like, yeah, just run the grass and throw the, I think that there were some tendencies there, and I think defenses were able to, it was very simple, and I think it could be effective, but I think defenses were able to pick up tendencies. And so, I mean, with Riley, it seems like the players get it. Like, there's a lot of studying they have to do, but they get it. You got a smart quarterback like Miller Moss. He's able to find these guys open. The fact that he found that many dudes open, 6 different guys that caught 45 yards worth of passes, like, that's a lot. I mean, that's crazy. It's not just like, I got 2 balls for 10 yards. Like, everyone he threw, the top 6 guys he threw passes to, all of them had at least 45 yards. Like, that's pretty crazy. Let's go to Autumn, Texas. How did USC's sideline look compared to LSU's sideline? I remember that being a talking point when the Trojans played Alabama.
Like size-wise or like analyst-wise or
sure.
Towel waving? I didn't notice the towel waving like it did last year. Maybe that was still happening.
It looked a lot more professional. I think Alabama had a lot of analysts, and I think Dan Weber wrote about this too. But no, I think it looked pretty similar as far as like sidelines go. USC, was as big and strong, I think, as most of the LSU guys. It was probably 55% LSU fans in the stands, 45 USC. LSU was definitely louder at first, but towards the end of the game, USC fans were getting into it. But there weren't any kind of huge discrepancies where you looked at what USC was doing. I didn't see the towel waving stuff. It just seemed like this was 2 really good teams that were facing each other. So I didn't see any kind of imbalance there.
I didn't notice anything either with the USC sideline. Last year, the towel waving did kind of bother me a little bit, so I wasn't looking there the whole time, but not noticing that I think was good. And I don't know how much I could take away, from being up in the press box, but I noticed the buy-in. It seemed like even the end of the bench guys were really into it, and it just goes to what Riley's been saying all offseason. It's a close team, and
yeah,
it's not a group of individuals. It's a group of players who are together, and that's the vibe I sort of got by looking at the bench.
Our buddy Blackie Chan in the chat says, question, USC beating LSU, with USC beating LSU, do you think we have an edge in front of LSU for Jakeem Stewart? Or Jakern Stewart?
No, Jakeem.
Jakeem, okay.
I think it helps for sure. It seems like a lot is going to have to happen behind the scenes to lock him down. Expect him to announce that he's going to reclassify either this week or next week, so he won't be 2026, he'll be 2025. So to the voicemail that we got earlier, how does this affect 2025 recruiting? If you can go out and lock down Jakeem Stewart after beating LSU head-to-head, and that even plays a small part in it, then that's a major, major win. I think it helps USC, but let's just say that the money has to be right, like with every 5-star recruit.
Yeah. No, Curtis is in the chat. Can't wait to see us versus the Pig Farmer, quarterback formerly from Utah this Saturday. Go Trojans, fight on. Curtis from Moreno Valley. It looks like we have one last question, and we'll get you guys out of here. From Christian, do you think this game hurt Bear Alexander's draft stock, or did he put good things on tape after the rewatch?
It might have hurt his draft stock a little bit, but
He didn't start, so that's like kind of weird.
one of the biggest things with this new defensive staff too, like remember the Cal first half when Alexander was suspended after the targeting hit he had against Utah, like how bad they looked against the run. Like USC desperately needed every ounce of Bear Alexander last year. Like when he wasn't in the game, you felt it. He played the most snaps by a long way out of any defensive lineman last season. And does it hurt his stock that he didn't play as much? I think it does a little bit. But if you're a USC fan and care more about the team than you do about one guy, that has to be a good thing. They do not need him the way they needed him last year after what I saw against LSU, and that is a big, big win. He was the number one most important Trojan on our list at USCFootball.com because if he goes out, we all thought, oh, you're in trouble. I didn't have number one, but I know others did, and he was number one when it was all said. Like, I don't want to say he's replaceable. I still think he's the best raw talent that you have in the middle. But after watching this game back, he did not play a ton compared to, or I mean, he played a good amount, but he didn't play as much as he would have.
It's like 40-something snaps
in the pat. Like USC's other guys are pretty good too, and I did not expect that. And if you expect that, people out there, I'd say you're crazy because who would have thought that Bear Alexander doesn't start, plays a little bit here and there, and USC still goes on to win? Like if they were to beat LSU, I would have thought, okay, you're getting everything possible out of Alexander, and he's going to have this huge game. He was okay, but he didn't really do anything extra special in this one, and USC still wins. To me, credit the coaching staff. Nate Clifton was awesome in the middle.
Yeah.
Gavin Meyer did his job. Bear, when he was in, was good. Kobe Pepe, like, it's not just one guy in the middle who you're relying on. You have a bunch of players who I think you can rely on, we can say, after that LSU game, and didn't expect that at all. So to answer the question, it probably hurt his stock a little bit, but I wouldn't sell any Bear Alexander stock. I think he'll have a good year this year and be on his way to the NFL after this season.
Yeah, little bear. Yeah, no, I feel like I called a lot. I feel good about the game and like all the offseason talk because we talk a lot on the offseason, and we'll talk a lot during the season too. I feel like I nailed a lot of this stuff. Even like we were doing our drive into Vegas, and Chris was doing like questions like as I was driving and taking Twitter questions, and they asked who was going to score the first touchdown. I said Woody Marks. Who's going to catch the first touchdown? I said Jacoby Lane. Felt good about that. But I picked Bear Alexander number one in the most important Trojans, and the dude doesn't even start. So like he can't be the most important Trojan if you're not starting. I would think like it's tough, but it's a testament to they feel pretty good about the other guys around them as well. We thought Isaiah Rakes, like he would have been a contributor in this one, and maybe his whole scheme was try to leave the SEC and come back and still play. I don't know, but he would have been a contributor too. But I thought it all was going to surround Bear Alexander. And if he goes down, the defense is doomed. And it doesn't seem like that's the case anymore. Now, he might be an integral part going forward and even play a bigger role and all that. But you played well against, pretty potent offense. And, he wasn't the biggest contributor or wasn't even out there in the starting lineup. So I think that's probably a good thing, and then maybe a motivational thing for Bear Alexander too.
And let me just look at his stat line. I didn't really feel like he did a whole lot in the game. I'm sure he had a tackle. Yeah, he had one tackle. Like he just didn't do a whole lot in this game. So probably didn't help his draft stock, but I still think he's in a good place. 6'3", 315. His recruiting background, his strength, his size. He'll need to do more in the future. If he averages one tackle a game and isn't playing a whole lot, then that, of course, won't help, but I still have a lot of belief in him.
Adam says, Mason Cobb said everything changed, held themselves accountable for everything, even their study habits for school, and picking up after themselves. Yeah, no, I think it's the camaraderie thing. And then one last thing we'll go. Bert says, is there a special teams coordinator or committee like last year? There is a special teams coordinator, but same guy. Like just they changed his title.
And he was the coordinator last year, even though he didn't have the title. Ryan Doherty.
Yeah. But
Matt Entz is like involved too.
Yeah, and he was like special teams guy for when he was the head coach. So yeah, I think that's.
So there's a little bit more help, I'd say.
Yeah, I think there's some help there. All right, well that's going to wrap things up. I know Conor's got to get over to practice. Good stuff. It was a lot of fun. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Again, we'll be back Thursday night. Mason Cobb will be our special guest. We'll have him live. He might even be in studio. I'm not sure, but. We'll have Mason Cobb, either a video and then in studio, and then we'll have me and Conor and Jack Smith previewing USC versus Utah State. But for Conor Morrissette, Mr. Triple Double, I'm Ryan Abraham. Hope you enjoyed the show, and we will talk to you next time.